Greetings, everybody. Hi, I'm Dr. Rick Wright, Captain, United States Navy, retired, and historian for the National Naval Officers Association. Today, we are presenting our inaugural podcast, and it will be entitled, This is NNOA, News, Views, Perspectives of the Greatest Sea Service Organization in the United States, as we support the look of diversity and inclusion in the sea services that include, of course, the United States Navy, the United States Marine Corps, and the United States Coast Guard. We have a most dynamic president who is a member of the National Naval Officers Association, a great surface warfare officer. He's a native of Washington, D.C. He's brilliant, he's smart, he's wonderful, and he's Rear Admiral Sinclair Harris, United States Navy retired, president of NNOA. Admiral, welcome to the inaugural podcast of This is NNOA, which will be featured on a weekly basis. And how things going down in Washington, D.C.?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Captain Dr. Wright. You are the most energetic, mature man I know, and I love your spirit, and I really appreciate the great leadership you've been providing us as our historian. Also, I thank your son, Ruben, who is putting together this podcast. I hope it is of use to many, both members and potentially new members. Things are going well. NNOA is doing extremely well. And as I put out in a recent message to NNOA membership, now the NNOA now is more important than ever.
Well, it is. We have an incredible scenario happening in the year 2020. This has been a most difficult and really a challenging year. But of course, the National Naval Officers Association, Admiral, we have chapters all over the world, right?
That's correct. We've got chapters in Okinawa, Hawaii, Guam. We've got chapters in the Far East, in Bahrain. We've got chapters across the United States, and more coming all the time. We're rebuilding older chapters. We are starting new chapters. So the growth of NNOA has been very exciting. And I think that, again, it's timing. Now more than ever, our sea services, and I include Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Public Health Service, MARAD, and NOAA, all are seeking a more diverse, inclusive core of leadership, and NNOA is proud to be part of their work.
Admiral, I'm going to call you. I'm going to give you a demotion. I don't mean that by God. Don't get on me. But Admiral Harris, let's dwell into your background with regards to your long 34-year career in the United States Navy. Now, you're from Washington, D.C. There's the Potomac River out there, and of course, we got the Pentagon and the Navy Yard. But as a young man growing up in Washington, D.C., where did that incredible NAVY name come into your psyche?
Well, I'll blame my mother, quite frankly, and she served in the Women's Army Corps. But the first three books she had me read as a child were Men Against the Sea, Pitcairn's Island, and Mutiny on the Bounty. So I began with a love for things naval, maritime, travel, and that's where it began, along with seeing the picture of Admiral Sam Gravely in Ebony magazine's top 100 most influential Black Americans. So I'd say those two areas.
Admiral Harris, what was your very first ship? I mean, as a young man in high school or college, what was the very first naval ship that you walked upon?
The USS Barry, I think, was probably the first one. She was a museum. She's gone now, down to Washington Navy Yard. And I believe that was the one that Mr. Calvin Jeffries, a gentleman who was a longtime mentor of mine, he was a boarder in the house that my mother and I lived in along with my aunt. And he used to take me to different Navy or naval events, and that also spurred my interest in the Navy.
So the barrier, I remember that baby was tied up at the Washington Navy Yard there on the Potomac. And of course, I can't believe we don't have a ship there. That's something NNOA's got to work on with the new Navy Museum they're putting up. We'll spearhead that. But Admiral, now, alrighty, you're finishing high school, right? Which high school did you attend in the Washington, D.C. area?
So I went to the greatest high school the world's ever known, St. Aloysius Gonzaga College High School, home of the Gonzaga Eagles.
Okay, Gonzaga Eagles. Now, was there a junior NROTC program at your high school that kind of sparked your interest, or it didn't exist?
No, there was nothing like that. Actually, when I was a senior, I applied for the Naval Academy because, again, I had this initial desire for things naval and sea and maritime. I applied for it. I got my congressional letter, but I
Yeah.
did not get selected by the Naval Academy.
Oh, so the Naval Academy, no selection. By the way, I've served on Senator Gillibrand selection board for the service academies up here in Syracuse, New York, and try to make sure we get some good folk headed out to the Naval Academy. Of course, the other service academies in our selection process. But Admiral, there is a university you ended up at, James Mason, right?
James Madison University.
James Madison, yes.
They only had Army ROTC, and I really was not interested in the Army. Even though I have a lot of uncles who served proudly in the Army, and a couple in the Marine Corps, and a couple in the Navy from way back. But they did not have Naval ROTC. To do that, you'd had to go all the way to Charlotte, and I couldn't afford to do that because I was working 40 hours a week when I was in college to pay for my tuition, room, and board.
I can understand, come out of Washington, D.C., and our families, of course, not a lot of resources, but a lot of incredible intellectual and cognitive ability. So you get over to, what's that, James Madison again? Is that James Madison? You're an economics major, handling money. Was that in your thoughts that this might be a way I can make things happen big time in the life and feed the family?
No, I started as an accounting major, realized after 2 years, even though my grades were okay, I thought accounting was boring. And my father had been an accountant.
Yeah.
And I finished off getting a minor in that, but economics was far more interesting. Graduated from there, got a job working for a consultant firm in the Washington area. But after about 4 months, I realized a few things about myself. Not married, don't have any kids.
Okay.
Not in love.
Okay.
And I was bored out of my mind. I couldn't stand going to work every day. I just hated what I was doing. So I pulled into the Navy recruiting office between work and home and said, hey, I graduated less than a year ago. What do you got? I took whatever tests they had for me, got through that. And the next thing you know, they had me on the delayed entry program or whatever they called it. And I went and started officer candidate school a few months after that.
Hey, look, I've been a member of CRUPCOM, go back Naval Recruiting Command. I went back to the 1980s. Do you remember where that particular recruiting office was located? I'm just from my own personal kind of knowledge as I think about our recruiting efforts.
It was on Route 1.
Okay, the famous Route 1. All right, I know the headquarters for CRUPCOM used to be over on Wilson Boulevard, over in across the river in Arlington years ago, but that's another story. Okay, so OCS, you get accepted to the Officer Candidate School. Alrighty, which one was working at that time? I know we've had them at Newport, they've been down at Pensacola and all over the fleet, but where was that particular Officer Candidate School located that you showed up at that nighttime and the morning time, Admiral?
It was February 2nd of 1982 in Newport, Rhode Island. And I really found out what the Hawk felt like with the wind and the waves and everything else coming off Narragansett Bay. It was a cold, cold time to arrive in Newport, Rhode Island.
So Naval OCS Newport, you're getting there in the wintertime. By the way, I spent a lot of years on faculty at Syracuse University, as you know, and I'm doing this for the radio audience. I mean, that is for our broadcast audience this afternoon. And of course, Syracuse, the Hawk, yeah, snow and cold weather conditions. And I grew up in North Carolina, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Okay, Admiral, what was that OCS experience like for you?
Well, it was odd, quite frankly. I didn't know what to expect going inside there. Again, I had military in my family, but never had been on a base except for a short visit. And really didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect out of the Navy in general. I just knew I didn't like what I was doing. And actually I took a pay cut from my job that I found after college to join the Navy. but things worked out.
Things worked out real time. So you graduate from Officer Candidate School. You're now a new ensign in the United States Navy. Now you got different paths to go. You could go into aviation, you could go into submarines, but there's a famous part of the Navy, which is the real Navy, I like to call it, the surface fleet. So you end up going with the surface fleet, right?
Correct.
Coming in, I'm also, as we talk about this career path for you, I hope that we also talk to young junior officers and also young people who are probably in high school looking at a career in the military, and also I'm trying to do a little recruiting thing for them also as they listen to this broadcast on this particular day, whenever they might be watching. So, or listening. Admiral, okay, you come out of OCS. What happens next? You leave Newport, you got that ensign uniform on, got that gold on your shoulders and on your sleeve, and everything is rolling. What happens next?
Well, you know, the first couple of years were exceptionally exciting for me. I got a chance to travel to parts of the country I'd never been before. I'd never been to Newport. My initial assignment was in Bremerton, Washington. My ship was going through overhaul, the USS Long Beach. Never had traveled across country, never been there before. The Surface Warfare Basic School was in San Diego. Never had traveled down the coast from Washington State to San Diego. Never been to Coronado, California, which I thought was like a fairy tale land because it was just so beautiful and everything else.
Yes.
And then took my first ship on deployment, got a chance to get qualified as officer of the deck, qualified surface warfare officer, both as an ensign, and traveled to places that I had only read about, like Hawaii and Korea and Japan and the Philippines and Australia. So it was just wonderful.
So from the streets of Washington, D.C., that adage about join the Navy and see the world, and it's not just a job, it's an adventure. Some of the slogans that the naval recruiting people use over the years is absolutely true, huh?
Absolutely. That was, quite frankly, my largest motivation, and the thing that kept me excited about joining the Navy and going in the first few years. It was through that, though, that I got a chance to meet sailors and work with them, and found how much I enjoyed and got out of working with sailors and Marines and eventually Coast Guard and others.
To our listening audience, this is NNOA, if you're just joining us, and I'm Captain Rick Wright, historian for the National Naval Officers Association, and of course the host of our podcast. And today we are featuring the president of the National Naval Officers Association, Admiral Sinclair Harris, United States Navy retired, and he's already given, if you missed any part of the first part of the program, you can always get it again and listen, but he's been talking about his background. And at this point, he's already completed OCS, he's a new ensign in the United States Navy, he's seeing the world, and my God, he took that trip to San Diego, California, landing at Lindbergh Field. Well, you landed at Lindbergh, or did the Navy get you at Naval Air Station North Island?
No, I maybe I misspoke. I drove from Washington to Newport, drove from Newport to Bremerton, Washington, drove from Bremerton, Washington down to San Diego.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So I was all by car.
No, you didn't misspoke. I'm an old poor guy trying to put the cognitive timeline together here. But I will go back to Bremerton. Okay, you're a brand new ensign, and the USS Long Beach was it was a nuclear powered cruiser, wasn't it? And it was in the shipyard.
Correct.
Oh, how did you feel walking in and your ship is in when it dry dock, all torn to pieces?
Well, I got to tell you, it was the ugliest thing I ever saw. It was a gray, a navy haze gray underway type of day as Ensign Harris finds his way to where the ship was berthed. She had tubes and wires and air ducts and stuff all over, going out of every single orifice. It was hard to figure out where the bow and where the stern was. There was so much stuff hanging off of there. I walk up the brow, and from my good OCS training, I knew I was supposed to turn toward the ensign, and I guessed right about where the ensign was because you couldn't see it with all the crap around it, and then turn to the person standing at the top of the brow and tell them Ensign Harris reporting on board. I saw words to that effect. And as soon as I said that, the lieutenant who was on board, an interesting character himself, he says, "Welcome aboard, Ensign. You owe me $25."
How? Was that for that requesting permission to come aboard, sir? Or
I requested permission to come aboard, but he was telling me I owed him $25 because he was the mess treasurer.
oh, for the officers' mess. Yes, yes, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are an officer in the United States Navy, we have a thing called the officers have to basically pay for their food served in the wardroom, right? I think I'm right about that, right, Admiral? And the officer mess is the kitty that is put together so we can have some nice food there. But for you other wonderful people want to come on the enlisted side, food's free. Don't worry about it. Okay, Admiral, now, the National Naval Officers Association is I like to say it's the foremost affinity group with regards to inclusion, diversity, and really setting the ranks of the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, and the United States Coast Guard with really a fair shake for a lot of people from our ancestry. Is that a true statement?
I think it's close enough. I really try not to compare our organization to the good work of the American Naval Officers Association, ANSO, or SSLA, or the other organizations, but ours is certainly the oldest. I believe we're the largest, and we've been at this since 1972, starting with the Naval Academy, of trying to increase the amount of recruits that were coming in of diverse backgrounds. And we've continued to grow, working across all the sea services and across all ethnicities ever since then. So I think that we're very well respected by leadership across the sea services, and I think that we are on the move.
Admiral, you brought up a magical number, 1972. And my math skills are really horrible, or poor, if I would say this afternoon. But if I were to add up the number, it looks like the year 2022 is 50 years. So that is a major milestone for the National Naval Officers Association coming up.
Absolutely, I'm excited. The 50th anniversary of NNOA, and with the position that we are in today, with representation across all the sea services, with respect by leadership across the sea services, with a mission that is as important now as ever, maybe even more. I look at the 50th as a chance for us to celebrate the good work that has been done by many across the diversity and inclusion spectrum in the NNOA, and again, to be thinking about what the future holds for the NNOA, for inclusion and diversity, as we try to continue to improve our sea services. So I'm excited. It's going to be a great time. We're going to do it in Annapolis. I think we're going to try to make it a 4-day event because we have so much and so many we'd love to hear from. We're organizing that, and it's going to be a spectacular 4-day event.
Well, I tell you what, I'm haunted by a very interesting person who came and spent a whole week with me during just about the end of his career with the United States Navy, when he was getting ready to retire. And he was on special assignment with the Naval Recruiting Command. And it came up to Syracuse University, spent a whole week with me. It was Captain Kenneth Johnson, who was really one of the founders of the National Naval Officers Association. And I'm telling you, he was fantastic. And I see him looking over my shoulder, Admiral Harris, that we got to have a great gala. And Captain Johnson up in heaven, your old buddy, Captain Rick Wright here, Syracuse, talking to Admiral Sinclair Harris on the 31st of October, right? 2020.
Yes.
The last day of the month. By the way, everybody, we got to fall back with the time tonight, too. And if you're in the Eastern time zone, I'm always coming to these crazy stuff, Admiral, but I'm just trying to get a lot of stuff in real quick. But getting back to Captain Kenneth Johnson, you know, I never forget a big story. Admiral, you'll love this, surface warfare story. My father, who is Reuben Wright, who is the producer and director of our podcast here for the National Naval Officers Association, His grandfather was Mr. Roosevelt R. Wright Sr. Dad was an electrician for the Navy during World War II at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. All right. I came home to Elizabeth City one summer. I had duty in Norfolk working with Surfland and helping the public affairs officers out. So I came down to Elizabeth City and I was in uniform, and Dad saw me and he said, "Oh, son, are you going to take me up to Norfolk so I can look at some of the ships and all?" And so my mother, who had already died, he had a new girlfriend, and Dad got his suit and everything on, and I picked him up, and we took the highway up from Elizabeth City up Highway 17 to Norfolk. All right, we get there and we go down Hampton Boulevard. You went to the Armed Forces College there, and Stan, well, of course, Norfolk is big time for surface warfare officers and enlisted and everybody. Well, anyhow, we go through the main gate, going into the Norfolk Naval Base. And the Admiral, we're riding, and my father is on the back seat with his lovely lady, and he's looking at these ships, and you know, Dad loves it, and he's just giving her a tour, talking about Navy ships. So we're going up, and Dad kept saying, "Oh, what ship are we gonna go on?" I could hear him in the background. I said, "Dad, I'm gonna take you on a very special treat." So we're going up near Pier 12 where all the aircraft carriers are tied up. I think a battleship, I think the Missouri was tied up. And I'm talking, this was in the 1980s. And so we kept driving, and Dad thought we were gonna stop and go on board one of the carriers on the Missouri battleship that was tied up there around Pier 10, 11, 12. And we kept driving. I said, "Yes, Dad, we're gonna go on board a ship." I said, "Dad, I'm gonna take you over to Little Creek, and we're gonna go aboard an LST." And Dad remembered LSTs of World War II, Admiral Harris, all right, Reuben's grandfather. So here's the story. We ride by NAS Norfolk, go by the BOQ and take that back entrance out of Norfolk Naval Base, drive over to Little Creek. So we pull up the main gate at Little Creek and we drive over, and we're headed over to the different ships. And there was these new LSTs. We pull up and Dad said, "What kind of ships are these?" I said, "Dad, these are LSTs." He said, "My God, these are LSTs." And he was thinking about World War II LSTs. Well, the ship that we were going on board, you know the story, the CO was Captain Ken Johnson, one of the founders of NNOA. So we go up and coming up the brow, Dad's bringing this lady up, and we salute the answer, request permission to come aboard. I said, "I'm Commander Wright, here to see Captain Johnson." He said, "Stand by." So we got escorted up to the wardroom. Dad did not know that Captain Johnson was an African-American CO. And Admiral Harris, I have photographs. In fact, I did an article on this in the NNOA News, and we had to pull those photos out for the part of our gala presentation. But we walked into Captain Johnson's stateroom and walked in, and my father looked. I said, "Dad, meet Captain Kenneth Johnson, the CO of the USS Saginaw," was the LST I think he was CO of. And my father was in a no another world. And of course, he was hungry, and Captain Johnson ordered down to the mess guys, "Hey, bring up some food up." And that was an incredible day. True story, Admiral. NNOA story, and of course, you've been a great surface warfare officer. Admiral Harris, you've gone up through the ranks. You've been on the staff of the Chief of Naval Operations. But tell us about that moment when you became the commissioning XO of a Navy ship, right?
Oh, yes, sir. So I actually am a plank owner several times over.
Yes.
My first one was as a junior officer. My second ship, the USS Vincennes.
Yes.
I was the auxiliaries officer, and then later became the damage control assistant on the cruiser Vincennes. But I was also decade later, the commissioning executive officer of the greatest destroyer the world's ever known, the USS Benfold, DDG 65, under the command of Mark Ferguson. And we had a great crew. It was the first destroyer to be commissioned with women as part of the initial crew.
So, Admiral Harris, the president of the National Naval Officers Association, you just keep making history after history, the historical timelines of the United States Navy. A service, by the way, at one time, the only thing they wanted us to use, our family, was mess cooks and stewards. But look what has taken place. And a lot has been the great efforts of NNOA also. Admiral Harris, after an XO tour, you also became the commanding officer of another ship too, didn't you?
Yeah, in fact, you can see a picture of a ship. I don't think it's the same one, but it's the same class, LSD, landing ship dock. The LSD 45, the greatest amphibious warship the world's ever known,
Yeah.
the USS Comstock. And I got command her. Actually, I followed another African American, Ed Barfield, and took her on deployment for what became during 9/11, we were deployed. And we actually were part of the group bringing the first sets of Marines into Afghanistan up to Camp Rhino and on from that ship.
Some of the sailors that I've met throughout the fleet, they love you, Admiral Harris. They said your management style and leadership style. Of course, you got a lot of great acronyms on leadership and management styles. But I understand you love that walking around by management. Just walking around the ship, meeting the sailors up close and personal. You were your personnel on board ship from the sailors that I've met who served under your command said you were absolutely incredible in caring about your crew and making things happen and all.
Well, I think any decent leader will tell you the same thing, is that your ship is as good as a crew.
Yeah.
And if you treat your crew well and you treat them the way that you would want to be treated, with both respect and discipline, you'll be amazed at what can be achieved. We had, for example, on that deployment, as we're headed after 9/11, we had a major casualty to a port line shaft bearing, or a port shaft, and had no control of it. And the rest of the group was headed over the horizon, and we were dragging along trying to get it fixed. Let me tell you, the crew, including the Marines, got to work on that shaft, doing everything they could possibly think of, manufacturing special tools that we found out by talking to somebody on the radio, and all sorts of different things. But it was heartwarming to see how the crew, and that includes the embarked Marines, came together to make things happen. And I found that to be true throughout my Navy career. Sailors are fantastic if you treat them with dignity, treat them with respect, and make sure they've got good discipline in order to have a good framework to work inside.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is the inaugural podcast of This is NNOA. It's featuring the president of the National Naval Officers Association, Admiral Sinclair Harris, retired. And of course, Admiral, weekly, we're going to spotlight members of the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, and getting the news, views, and perspectives of the National Naval Officers Association known throughout the world. And of course, one of the key things, our 50th anniversary is coming up, and we're going to have a good time, a gala in Annapolis, Maryland, home of the United States Naval Academy. Now, I got a couple questions. Hey, Ruben, our producer, hey, Ruben, what's that you just shot to me here? A question real quick. Ruben, Ruben is asking you, Admiral, how did you find NNOA? How did you learn about NNOA and when did you join? That's the question our producer, Ruben Wright III, has shot over to me.
So that was kind of a funny situation. I had never heard of NNOA and OCS, didn't hear about it on my first two ships. And basically I was at the time in Monterey, California. I was a new student at Naval Postgraduate School. And as I was walking to class one day, somebody came up to me and said, hey, do you play softball? I said, I play at it, I'm not great. They said, well, how would you like to play for the NNOA Eagles? And I said, okay, well, who are the NNOA Eagles? And so I found out about NNOA because they needed a baseball player. I played like first base or something like that. And we had a great team, by the way. But that's how I was introduced to NNOA.
Well, that answers Ruben Wright III's question, Admiral. Admiral, before we close out this afternoon, I want everybody to know that you also were commander of the fleet, the 4th Fleet of the United States Navy. Give us a little idea where the 4th Fleet was based and what were your responsibilities in that big area of command, which is really the ultimate for a naval officer, especially on the surface fleet.
Well, it certainly was, and a wonderful tour. Continues to be well led by Rear Admiral Don Gableson. And I was the second African American to get that position as fleet commander. Rear Admiral Vic Guillory, who was a longtime mentor and coach of mine, preceded me in that position by at least one more officer. But 4th Fleet is headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. 4th Fleet is the naval component commander to U.S. Southern Command. So the responsibility basically rests from below Mexico, across the Caribbean, and throughout Central and South America. A lot of our work is involved with interdiction of the trafficking of persons and the trafficking of illicit drugs. It also is in our partnership building with some great navies from South America and in Central America who are doing phenomenal work. I became very close with the Brazilians, the Chileans, the Peruvians, and especially the Colombians. But certainly Honduras was also special friends of ours, and a number of others. We do such things as the UNITAS exercise, which is one of the longest running, if not the longest running exercise. It's not as big as RIMPAC, but it's pretty big. Panamax, the defense of the Panama Canal, and a number of other things like continuing comfort, where we are supporting with our medical personnel a number of countries with help, medical and even surgical help, and building those bonds that are so important to the southern approaches of the United States.
I run into a number of sailors also in my Navy career who've told me years ago, hey, Commander Wright, you got to go on a UNITAS cruise, man. You got to go on a UNITAS cruise, and you got to go to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And of course, you got to cross. By the way, Admiral, we have some traditions in the Navy. And for a lot of new sailors who might be on a UNITAS cruise and they got to cross a thing called the equator, something normally happens to a sailor, that officer or even enlisted, that's never crossed the equator, right? Is there?
Well, I've crossed the equator 3 or 4 times, starting in 1984 when I was on Westpac. I'm also, I think they call it digger of the ditch. I've been through both the Panama Canal several times and through the Suez Canal. Actually, I went through the Suez Canal 3 times in 1 month. But the only thing I've not done, I'm not a blue nose. I've never been to the Arctic. You talk to people like Admiral Haney or Admiral Grooms or one of those submarine, Admiral Mel Williams. Ask one of those guys about that. I've not been to the Arctic or Antarctic. But the other things I've gotten the check in the box for.
Well, Admiral Sinclair Harris, Washington, D.C. Every time I talk about Washington, D.C., we had a great basketball star here at Syracuse called Lawrence Moten. And I used to call Lawrence 14th Street Moten. We were always talking about Washington, D.C. and Howard University and all those great spots. Coming from that incredible world, and you said you'd never been anywhere in your life. And then, of course, after a great college career, you joined the United States Navy. And Admiral, I think this afternoon you have given us an idea of what a poor guy or a young lady who's never been anywhere joined the Navy. You're definitely going to see the world. Well, Admiral, as we do our broadcast this afternoon, and especially like to talk to the junior officers before we close down another 3 or 4 minutes, junior officers of the United States Navy, the United States Marine Corps, and the United States Coast Guard. Can you give those young people who are in the fleet, who are not members of NNOA, a real good reason why they need to come join this organization?
I would tell you that while I joined because they needed a softball player, I stayed because of all the things that I received. I met a number of role models during my time in NNOA, and I still cherish them to this day. I increased my network of mentors and of coaches, and even more importantly, of advocates through my association with the NNOA. There's no other organization that I know that brings together all the sea services plus NOAA, MARAD, and Public Health Service. There's no other organization I know of that is focused as we are on the officer community and the improvement of inclusion and diversity I just think that there's so much richness that I personally have received, and I hope others continue to receive through association with the National Naval Officers Association. It's a very unique organization, and if it didn't exist, we would probably have to create it.
Well, the mentoring and of course the family and the relationships within the National Naval Officers Association and to all of those young officers of the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, not joining NNOA, you're missing a real treat with regards to your career and the enjoyment of life. Admiral Sinclair Harris, president of the National Naval Officers Association. We're getting ready for our 50th anniversary that will be held in the summer of 2022 in Annapolis, Maryland, home of the United States Naval Academy. And Captain Kenneth Johnson, he's smiling in heaven this afternoon with this inaugural podcast and broadcast. This is NNOA, and we'll be featured and we'll be on air weekly with all kinds of news, views, perspectives, and great conversation about our great organization. This edition has been produced and directed by Reuben Wright III, who's a graduate of Syracuse University, the Newhouse School of Public Communications. He's now doing his master's degree in public affairs and magazine and online journalism, and he is the major consultant for the National Naval Officers Association. Admiral Harris, a pleasure having you this afternoon. Let's keep in it. Well, no, not let's keep. NNOA is alive, is what I would like to say. God bless you and your family, Admiral, and I can't wait to see you again. And of course, to everybody again, this has been NNOA, and we've been broadcasting from Syracuse, New York. Bravo Zulu, Admiral Hayes Gray, and I am underway.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.